Sometimes you hear people say that there's a contradiction in the Bible because in Exodus 20, verse 13, God gives the sixth commandment, which says, "Thou shalt not kill." But then if you continue to read the Bible, you find that in other places, God commands the Israelites to massacre entire cultures of people. And they say, well, this is a contradiction. How could God say, don't kill, and then he commands the Israelites to kill? Well, if you want to find places where God commands the Israelites to kill, you don't need to go that far forward in the Bible. Again, Exodus 20, verse 13, God says, "Thou shalt not kill." But if you go 25 verses forward into the next chapter, and remember, when the Bible was written, there was no chapters. If you go 25 verses forward, God says to the Israelites, "He that smiteth a man so that he die shall be surely put to death." So, is this a contradiction? In one verse, God says, "Thou shalt not kill," but 25 verses later, he commands the Israelites to kill. So, is this a contradiction? Well, let's go back to the sixth commandment and ask the simple question, what is the spirit of the law? Thou shalt not kill. And by spirit, I mean, what is the intention behind the law? What is the purpose of the law? The purpose of the law is to preserve life. Now, when you go 25 verses forward, and God tells the Israelites to execute people who are guilty of murder, what is the purpose of that law? The purpose of that law is, again, to preserve life. If I tell you that I pointed a gun at somebody's head and blew their head off, you would probably say, well, that's cold-blooded murder. But what if I told you that the person was in my house trespassing in the middle of the night and the person had a gun to my wife's head? Well, then I wouldn't be guilty of cold-blooded murder. I'd be a hero. All I did was just change the context. If I change the context, I can go from a cold-blooded murderer to a hero. So the sixth commandment is not a universal law in the sense that you should never kill, because that's simply not practical. Now, because of current events in Gaza, there's a lot of talk on social media, and I don't really take a position on that particular topic. It's extremely divisive, and there's all kinds of evil and bloodshed that's going on over there. The only advice that I would give people is not to trust one word that the mainstream media says about it. Because really, in my opinion, what's most likely going on is simply governments are manipulating people, and the victims are the people who are being destroyed. But as I was listening to somebody criticize the Israelis, they were going a little bit too far, and they were going into the history of Israel and saying, well, the Israelis have had a history of killing people and massacring them. And he was referring to how the Israelites went into the Promised Land, and they were commanded by their God to massacre the people. And by the way, that is true. God did command the Israelites to do this, and his argument was, well, the Israelites did this, so they are evil, and their God commanded them to do this, so their God is evil. But that's only half of the story. If you continue to read the Bible, what you find is that the Israelites went into the Promised Land, they destroyed the people, they took over that territory, but then over the centuries, the Israelites were corrupted because they integrated the pagan culture and started worshiping other gods, and they became just as evil as the people that they destroyed when they entered the Promised Land. And because they became so evil, God destroyed the Israelites, and he took them into captivity. First, he broke Israel into two parts, and then eventually both parts were taken into captivity. So what does that tell you? It tells you that God is no respecter of persons. Even though the Israelites were given a special purpose to preserve the Word of God, God would not pardon them when they committed great acts of evil, and he destroyed them. Not only did he destroy them at the time of Nebuchadnezzar, when the Babylonians took Judah, and at the time of the Assyrian Empire, when the northern half of Israel was taken, but he also destroyed them through the Roman Empire. So he destroyed them twice. Again, God is no respecter of persons. So why did God command the Israelites to go into the Promised Land and destroy the people? Well, remember when God spoke to Abraham when he was living in the land of Canaan. Genesis chapter 15, verse 12 says, "And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abraham, and lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him. And God said unto Abraham, Know for a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them." This is talking about the Egyptians. "And they shall afflict them 400 years, and also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. And afterward shall they come out with great substance, and thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full." Notice God says, they shall come hither again. Hither meaning here. He's telling Abraham that your people will be taken into slavery in Egypt for 400 years, but they're going to come back to this place. He's telling Abraham that he's going to bring his descendants back to the land of Canaan. Why? Because the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So this is suggesting that the reason that God brought the Israelites into the land of Canaan to possess it and take it was because God was using the Israelites as a tool to basically destroy the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Jebusites, because they had become so evil that God just wouldn't tolerate it anymore. So when the Israelites did prepare to come into the land of Canaan, the promised land, Joshua was their leader. And the first city that they attacked was Jericho. And Joshua came close to Jericho as the leader of Israel. And in Joshua 5, verse 13, it says, "It came to pass, when Joshua was by Jericho, that he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there stood a man over against him, with his sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went unto him, and said unto him, Art thou for us, or for our adversaries? And he said, Nay, but as captain of the host of the Lord am I now come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth, and did worship, and said unto him, What saith my Lord unto his servant? And the captain of the Lord's host said unto Joshua, Loose thy shoe from off thy foot, for the place whereon thou standest is holy. And Joshua did so. So this man standing before Joshua was not just a normal man. When a person was commanded to take off his shoes, that meant that this was a holy man. Remember, when Moses spoke to God through the burning bush, God commanded that Moses take his shoes off. So this man had something special about him. And in Exodus 23, verse 20, long before this moment when Joshua prepared to destroy Jericho and lead the people into the land of Canaan, God told the Israelites the following. He said, Behold, I send an angel before thee to keep thee in the way, and to bring thee into the place which I have prepared. Beware of him, and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgression. For my name is in him. But if thou shalt indeed obey his voice, and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy unto thine enemies, and an adversary unto thine adversaries. For mine angel shall go before thee, and bring thee in unto the Amorites, and the Hittites, and the Perizzites, and the Canaanites, and Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I will cut them off. Thou shalt not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do after their works, but thou shalt utterly overthrow them, and quite break down their images. So again, when God told Abraham that his descendants would come hither again into the promised land, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full, he's talking about how the people in the land of Canaan had become so corrupt that God would destroy them. And this angel that God was talking about could have been this man that was standing before Joshua, this man who would lead the army of Israel. We know that Joshua was the leader of Israel, but in reality, it was the angel of God that led them into the land of Canaan. Now, when God was talking to Abraham, notice that he only referred to one nation that was full of iniquity. He didn't refer to the Hittites or the Perizzites or the Canaanites or the Hivites or the Jebusites, even though the Israelites did destroy those people. And one explanation for that is that the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, they already became evil. At the time of Abraham, they were already evil. But the Amorites were the only ones that had not completely been corrupted. So it's possible that once they became corrupted, that was the point where there was no hope for the people of the territories in the Promised Land. And so that's why God told Abraham the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. But the most important thing to understand about all this is that, again, God is no respecter of persons. God told the Israelites in Exodus 22, verse 21, "Thou shalt neither vex a stranger nor oppress him, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt." So God does not just have people going around killing innocent people. Those who kill innocent people will eventually be destroyed. Again, God is no respecter of persons.